as well kick it off. Let me get my video going here. Hello. My name is Michael. I head up the open source community here at Hardex, focused around Label Studio. This is the second partner webinar we will have done. I'm very excited for this one. Today we've got Kevin Kho, open source community engineer at Prefect. I think a lot of folks are going to find Prefect, who maybe haven't been as familiar with it from the Label Studio side, a really powerful tool that could potentially help with a lot of different things that I've heard recently are of interest. At the same time, if there are folks here from the Prefect side of the house, I hope that Label Studio is a revelation to those of you that aren't familiar yet. Few housekeeping items to kick us off. Definitely join our Label Studio Slack. We are taking questions throughout Kevin's presentation. We're not going to be doing the questions at the end, so ask away as they come up. We're going to be covering a lot of ground, so don't be shy, please. Just join our #webinars channel over on the Label Studio Slack. The bit.ly is at the bottom of this screen. You can either copy that, or you can just go to labelstud.io, or you can go to hardex.com. Links are in all of our things, or you can go to our Git repo. Many places you can find out how to join our Slack. But please join and submit questions. Kevin is very welcoming of questions. Now, Kevin, before I kick it to you, just a few more things. I just want to run everybody through, there we go, what we're going to be talking about. So a little bit of housekeeping. I have a slide where we're going to talk about some upcoming stuff. I'll introduce Kevin, and I'll kick it over to him, and we'll just get right into the meat of today's webinar, which is orchestrating image preprocessing workflows for Label Studio with Prefect.io. I know a lot of folks in our community are working with images, very detailed annotations and images, and I think this could be very useful for a number of you. And then we're going to get into something fun, which we're trying for the first time. This is a new thing we're trying. We're going to be doing a little bit of a contest for a $100 Amazon gift card. I'll be speaking about that after we go through the presentation and do all the Q&A that you guys would like. This will be a challenge that will be starting today. I think it'll be fun for folks to participate in. Very low barrier for entry, and then it's actually going to be judged by the community. But I don't want to get too much into that now. That's a little bit of a tease for later. But the winner will get a $100 Amazon gift card, and the winners will be announced next Wednesday. So the contest really only runs for the next 5 or so days. So it's something that's just a quick hitter. We're trying it out to see what sort of engagement it gets. So let's see. So after that, we're going to wrap up the call. So let's get into housekeeping before I kick it over. There's more than this to talk about. These are just a few highlights. I didn't want to bog us down with a million different calls to action. But if you're not aware, 1.0.2 is out now. You can check our announcements channel in Label Studio Slack for details if you weren't aware. Also, this has not been announced yet. So this is the first place it's actually being formally announced from us. NVIDIA wrote a blog about Label Studio, generating high-quality labels for speech recognition with Label Studio and NVIDIA Nemo. Definitely check that out. Or you can take a screenshot of this link here, or you can check announcements or our socials later, or just Google that title. But that's a great thing. We've been working on that blog with NVIDIA for a while. Finally out, lives on NVIDIA's developer website, and we're really happy to be able to share that information. Breaking news. The next webinar we're going to be doing, we are finally, in 2 weeks, on June 9th, our CTO, Nikolai, is going to be tackling a topic that we've been wanting to cover for a while, but there's a lot to it. We have a lot of questions all the time about all things machine learning, integrations, backend, et cetera. So we're going to be covering a lot in that webinar. If you've been curious or frustrated about anything related to machine learning and Label Studio, or just want to learn more, join us on Wednesday, June 9th. I'll be sending out an Eventbrite probably early next week that people can use to get a calendar invite and to register for the event. That's going to be a really good one, and one that's been much requested. So after that, we have, in 2 weeks' time after that, we have another partner webinar teed up. We're going to firm up the details between now and then, but we're going to be doing something with Great Expectations in a webinar that we're really excited about. If you're not familiar with Great Expectations, I don't know what to tell you. Go take a look. And then today at the end, we're going to announce the Prefect Challenge for a $100 Amazon gift card. All right, so That's all the self-promotion I've got, Kevin. Without further ado, I'd like to kick it to you if I could. Kevin is the open source community engineer at Prefect and was very generous with his time and is going to show us how to do some pretty cool stuff with Prefect that will help Label Studio preprocessing workflows. Take it away, Kevin. I'll stop sharing.
I'll share my screen. Do you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So hey everyone, that's an interesting lineup. We actually have a lot of people using Prefect and Great Expectations together also. But anyway, so my name is Kevin. I am the open source community engineer at Prefect. So I am primarily responsible for maintaining our Slack channel, answering questions people have, getting started with Prefect. And then I also do like webinars, conferences, and just in general content creation, in addition to managing the community. So today I'll be talking about orchestrating image pre-processing workflows with Prefect and Label Studio. It just didn't fit. The full title didn't fit. So to start off this explaining what Prefect does, first we're going to start like building a simple script that helps us pre-process images. What we're going to do is just get images from one S3 bucket, run some transformations, and then upload it to another S3 bucket. And then we'll talk about how that script can potentially fail and what safeguards you need in order to get that script running and reliably in a production setting. And then that will explain, and then after that, I'll show why in general workflow orchestration systems help with that, and what's specifically Prefect also has to offer in regards to productionizing these scripts. And then we'll do a quick demo using Prefect and DAS to parallelize flows to get more, to run our flows in faster time. So as I said, our motivation for today is number one, we will get an image from an S3, we'll get images from an S3 bucket, apply some correction and output it to another S3 bucket. So the situation here, and I know there's some Prefect users who have this kind of setup where there's data coming into an S3 bucket in general, and they have a Prefect flow running every day to look at that bucket, see if there's new data. And then if there's new data, they kick off some processes and they output it somewhere. But in general, they have a batch job that runs every day that looks for new data coming into an S3 bucket. And after we pre-process that data, we're gonna then see how you can pass it to Label Studio in order to like label it. In this specific case, it will be a object detection or semantic segmentation problem. So in general, we'll see how these two tools go hand in hand. So our data today, I got the data set from the Kaggle 2018 Data Science Bowl. The contest here was about identifying the nucleus location inside images, and the goal here was that like this an accurate model would help speed up the production of cures for diseases. So let's assume that we just got like these raw images from whatever like data collection was happening, and what you're gonna see is on the left side, there's if a labeler was going to go into this image and mark the location of the nuclei, it would be pretty apparent where the nuclei are, and it'll be easy to make the bounding box around it. Now on the right side, I don't know if you can see it, but it's very faint. There are some nuclei here. There are some lighter spots, and those are the location of the nuclei. So for our specific scenario here, what we're going to be doing is getting the raw images, increasing the contrast a little bit, just so we can help our labelers provide more accurate labels. So here I'm just increasing the brightness of some certain nuclei so that they stand out more, and it'll be a lot easier once we pass it to Label Studio. So I'm gonna make a simple Python script that does it. I'm just not going to show like imports in the code. We're just going to go over what the functions actually do. So here are our first two. In general, this is the list of functions that we're going to pass over. So number one, we're going to get all the images that live on S3. And then for each of those images, we're going to loop through, load the image, convert it to a pillow image. And then pillow has operations to improve the contrast and also to resize. And then we'll save the image to an output S3 bucket. So the first function here, nothing too surprising. I'm just getting a list of all the images that live in the bucket. So we use boto3. I'm already authenticated. And then we scan the bucket for all of the keys, and we just add the keys to our list of images and return that. The second one, once we're given an image name, all we're doing is getting the bucket again, and then loading that image, and then returning it. And then here, these three functions, the first one will take in an image, and we just want to convert it to a pillow image so that from a NumPy array, so that we can use the pillow library to the built-in methods of the pillow library. And then here is our improving of the contrast. There's a parameter here, which is the factor. And we are using the image enhance, improving the contrast with a factor of 2. So if we need more contrast, then we can increase this factor. And then resizing. So a lot of convolutional neural nets, they require the input to be a certain size. So for this specific case, we'll like resize it before labeling already and make them all uniform. And then the last function is saving it the output to S3. So we take in the image value. This image, this first parameter is the actual like image values, like the actual numbers, and this one is the file name. So we can save it by making this bytes.io stream, and then using this S3 put object with the key name. So now we just upload it to the other S3 bucket, this processed images bucket, with the same name. And then just for the sake of monitoring, I want to make a Slack alert. I'm not going to demo how to make a Slack alert because this is much easier on the Prefect side, which I'll show later. And then the actual running of the code. So now I have this script working. I want to put it in production. So what I'm going to do is just make this simple loop. And then this is our get images. And then for each of those images, we load the image, convert, process, and save. And maybe I'll just schedule this. There's a couple ways to schedule this job. Like I could use like cron, or I could use Windows like task scheduler if you're on Windows. The point is I have a script and I can now get this running every day. But there are a couple of ways this can go wrong, right? So number one, what happens if one image fails inside this loop? Then the whole loop will actually die, right? So if there are 100 images that it wants to process, but image number 2 or 3 fails, the other 97 or 98 images will just stop processing also, right? Number 2, what happens if the connection to S3 goes down just for a little bit, whether it be my internet or like just in general, the request to S3 failed, right? What we can do is just code a simple retry so that we can, if the connection goes down, we can just try uploading or getting that image again. And then if there is, what happens if there is no image to run? Can we like gracefully skip everything and provide like a message that says that there were no images run? How do we do, how do I do separate parameterized runs? Like for example, if I have this script already and I wanted to increase that factor to increase the contrast, I'd have to go back in, edit the script, save it, and it's just not a graceful way. And then last, if I have this running in production, how do I just schedule it immediately? I'd have to spin up another, terminal or command line, and then just run the program again. And in general, all of these issues are solvable. Like you can have try excepts, you can code retries yourself by just like looping through and checking if the stuff is there. You can also like in terms of parameterized runs, there's no problem. You can really just change the value of that contrast factor and then rerun again. But each time you're doing one of these things, you're actually modifying your code in a way that distracts you from your original goal, right? So your goal is just to get this image preprocessing done. And each time you have to address one of these questions, you're doing something that's safeguarding you against failure. And this is what we call negative engineering in Prefect. So when we talk about negative engineering, we're talking about safeguarding all of the ways that things can go wrong, having failure logic implemented such that if something does indeed go wrong, like do you want to be notified? Do you want your code to take a different route? Do you want simple retries and maybe that will succeed? What if data that comes in is malformed? Like what if there was a corrupted image in our case? How do we just skip that image and proceed with all of the others, right? How do we tell our script that that's okay? And in general, the goal of Prefect is to eliminate negative engineering. So before the company was created, our founder talked to a lot of data engineers and data professionals, and what they found was that as much as 90% of the work done is on the negative engineering side, right? So if we can reduce that negative engineering from 90% to 80%, we're in effect doubling developer productivity by doubling the amount of time that engineers can spend on the positive engineering side, on the things they actually want to accomplish, rather than safeguarding against failure. And that's when Prefect was born. So Prefect was born. Prefect is an open source workflow orchestration tool, mainly Python based. It was intended to handle the modern data stack. So our founder was part of the Airflow maintainer committee. He at one point had the third highest commits in Airflow, and he proposed a list of changes that would get Airflow equipped to handle the volume of data today. These list of changes were rejected, and that's when Prefect was born as sort of a successor to Airflow. Like if we could build Airflow again from the ground up. So these lists of, and you'll see some of these, I'll explain some of these changes, but so Prefect was born out of that. In general, there's a very active community. So we have 6,300 plus GitHub stars now. Our Slack channel has 5,500 members. If you post a question in the Slack channel, you'll get a response, if not from me, from another community member. But my job is focused on the Slack channel and responding to questions there. A lot of people just want to, brainstorm ideas or kind of get insight into bugs that they're seeing, whether it be Prefect related or something else infrastructure related, and we help with all of those. And then we have two offerings, so in Prefect Cloud and Prefect Server. So I'll be demoing Prefect Core today, and then I'll show you Prefect Cloud. So Prefect Core is like the Pythonic API that you use to make your workflows. And then after that, you would register it with a backend, whether that be Prefect Cloud or Prefect Server. And the backend is the one that handles more of the orchestration side of things. And also, there's a lot more functionality that you can do, like monitoring. Like it's a one-stop shop for all your monitoring needs, or like your like modifying, like let's say parameterized flows, or let's say off-schedule runs. You can do that all in the backend, and I'll show that later. So in order to go from our flow, to go from our script earlier that takes images from one bucket and uploads them to another, we want to convert this to a Prefect workflow. And flows are comprised of tasks. So a task is like a Python function, and flows are like Python scripts. And in order to bring this into Prefect, all we have to do is to use this task decorator. And now this function gets converted into a task, and then this task can be used inside the flow. So all I'm doing is adding this task to each of my functions. The task comes with its own logger, so I can pull this logger using this code snippet, and then I can use the logger here. And now what this does is when you use a backend like Prefect Cloud or Prefect server, you will, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't explain server. So server is our open source version of cloud that people get and spin up in their own on-premise environments, entirely free. But if also you choose to try Prefect Cloud today, there's also 10,000 free task runs that everyone gets every month. So it's more than enough to get started. A typical Airflow workload would be around 1,000 tasks, maybe what we see like per day. So definitely 10,000 is a lot to get started with. And then so here we're just adding some logging, and then the top code snippet here is what we had originally, where we got the images, we looped through them, and we did all of these operations. Below is the prefect version of that. So all we need to do is wrap it inside the flow. This is my flow name. And then instead of this for loop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to map instead, right? And the map operation performs this function for each input of that list. So image files gives me a list of images. And for each image in that list, I can run this function and then pass it over like this. And what this just does is, this is all, like if you have one image, it goes through all of these operations. Like if there were a graph constructed, you would see that this would fan out into all of those images, and they would just have their own trees that go go downward, right? And then so for each image, they will run through all of these operations. And I'll explain that more when we talk about mapping more later. But there's a bunch of interesting things here that Prefect offers. So first is the first class passing of data. What you see here is this images is actually a list of the loaded images, right? And we are passing the list of loaded images to another task. So a lot of other workflow orchestration systems don't allow this kind of operation. What you have to do is you have to save the file somewhere, and then in a downstream task, you have to load that file, right? So here we have a first class passing of data that you don't need to persist in some location. The second one is setting of dependencies. Over here, because I chain these operations in this way, and I use the upstream output for a downstream task, Prefect is automatically constructing that graph of your workflow and setting those dependencies using this, right? So it's a very Pythonic way, and you don't really need to litter your code with set upstream like function calls, right? Like some other frameworks. The last thing is there's ability of local testing. I can now simply just call flow.run, and this is basically running that Python script. And I don't need to spin up any server whatsoever or any, like other workflow, or like for example, Airflow, they require you to spin up a lot of services just to get a test of your flow, and you don't need to do that with Prefect. And I don't know if you can.
Before you move on to this, I just wanted to say, I like that phrase, the Pythonic way. I feel like that could be a company name or something. Anyway,
yeah.
I just wanted to pause also to remind people that if anyone has any questions throughout this presentation, Kevin has asked that we ask them throughout, and I just interrupt and orally state them. So if you have questions, it's not a problem if we interrupt the presentation. It is actually encouraged. Did I get that right, Kevin?
Yeah, for sure.
Got it. All right.
Because we're just gonna build over as we go. So I definitely don't want people getting lost in the middle. So from our earlier flow here, where we can register it to Prefect Cloud, and then we can examine the schematic here. So note that this downstream on the right, that's the upstream dependencies that were set automatically. Note post to Slack here is on its own. That's because post to Slack here does not take anything in. So there's no clear dependency, and we'll show how to attach that later. The file list also comes into play when we save. So here is an example of this get images which contains the file names being used in this immediate downstream task and all the way at the end. So it connects all the way. If we want to set retries, all we have to do is feed it into the task decorator and then provide a retry delay. So here, like if the S3, if loading something from S3 fails, we can just try this a maximum of 3 times with a delay of 1 minute each. The second, next we have parameters. So parameters are special tasks that receive user inputs during runtime. In this specific case, we have a resize function, and the default was 256, which you see up here. And maybe I want to change that into like 512 or something, or maybe even lower, like 128. Here, we're saying that there will be a parameter called size, and then I'm passing that size to this function when the flow runs. So now users will be able to just change the parameters when they want, if they want, and they can do this like in an ad hoc way. If they just want to change the parameter for like one flow run, they can do that with no problem. You can also use parameters with flow.run just by feeding it inside a dictionary called parameters, and now the flow will run with this value. And the last line over here, posting to Slack. This is a lot easier to do with Prefect than if you were to code this yourself. But before that, let's talk about how we would set that upstream to correct that schematic that we saw earlier. And what we're going to do is we're going to save this last function into this variable. And now we can set that as we can set an upstream task for this post to Slack function call, or task call, really. And we set this as saving. Saving is this the output of this task. So now post to Slack will run only after the images are saved. I said that posting to Slack would be a lot easier on the prefect side. That is because we have a task library. So you saw earlier that we created a bunch of tasks. We have a task library that contains like already built tasks that sometimes people can just grab. So we have a lot of users who are not as experienced with Python, may not really be coding their own tasks, but they can still get started with Prefect by using our task library. So like 80-90% of these are community contributed. You see great expectations here for data validation. A lot of people have some use case where they just like pull data from one source, like maybe like Postgres SQL over here, and they're uploading it to maybe like an S3 bucket. So a lot of people just like use these tasks to maybe to load data from one spot and post it to another, kick off like data processing jobs with Databricks or dbt. So the built-in task library already gives you a lot of functionality in a very like quick way to use. So here we're specifically going to be using the Slack task, and the way to use it is we would import that task, and then here I'm just configuring it where I say post to Slack equals the Slack task, and then the message will be these images have been processed, and then the webhook secret. So in order to post to a Slack channel, you need the Slack webhook. And I have configured the webhook URL because this is a secret that should not be exposed. I already configured this. But in general, before we move on to the secrets, I just want to say that this post to Slack, this task has now been created, and now I can run it in my flow like this, and this will post to Slack whenever I run the flow. These are all the lines of code we need in order to get that posting to Slack. And then now secrets. So Prefect Cloud, and this is only available in, well, so Prefect Cloud has a vault where you can store your secrets. So here I configured a Slack webhook URL that is the channel, or is that webhook that I want to call in order to pass this message to. And then now I can use it in my code just by attaching this secret into this task. You can also use environment variables as secrets. And then I'm not really going to use this like in our flow later, but then I just want to give an example that you can still have conditional logic. So this case task is the equivalent of an if else. So here I'm getting a parameter that is called reshape, and the default is true. So now I can say if reshape equals true with the with case reshape true, then I resize my I call my resize task and pass in the size. Otherwise, if reshape is false, then I won't resize. So I can also have conditional logic within my flow. And this is what the new schematic would look like. Note the Slack task here became a dependency at the end. There is an if-else clause happening here. These are the parameters. And if it is true, then we'll hit the resize. Like these, all of these images will get resized. Otherwise, it would just get skipped, and we would go to save image. Our flow, all we have to do is move from flow.run to flow.register. And then when we register, we just have to give it a project name, and this will now be registered in Prefect Cloud. The last thing we need to do to actually put this into production is to attach a schedule to our flow. And a lot of use cases, right? People run this like for example, for our use case, we want to run this in a daily way. So what I'm going to do is create this interval clock. The start date will be now, which is just the datetime UTC now. And then I will make the interval every day. And here's something interesting. You can pass parameters into clocks. So for the same flow, like I could be running this like every day with this parameter. And then maybe if I wanted to run it like every week without like reshaping, then I could pass a parameter that says like reshape is false. And now I could run the same flow with two sets of parameters and get different outputs. So I could parameterize things like, let's say, bucket location, like stuff like that, if I wanted another bucket to process another bucket. So I could have two buckets, and one being run daily, another being run weekly. And then clocks get added together in order to make a full schedule. So I showed here an example of the interval clock. We also have a cron clock for those more familiar with cron. And then there are three ways that you can, three mechanisms that you can use in the schedule. So the first is the clock, which we showed here. The second is filters. So these are things like remove weekends from the schedule, from the clocks, or like remove remove every Monday, or remove this block of time, like don't run this outside of like work hours. Adjustments are then like stuff like do this on the next business day, and then these bypass the schedule. So with these three, you have a very robust set of tools that give you a lot of flexibility with schedules. So before we go into more advanced topics, just to recap what we went through, we had the basic script, and we wanted that script to work in a more reliable way. So I introduced you to flows and tasks, the basic semantics of Prefect workflow orchestration, and then we went over some of the Prefect like functionalities such as parameters and retries. I showed you the task library, and we got we used the Slack task from the task library, and we attached the appropriate secret to configure it. And now we can get notifications whenever our flow runs. And then I showed conditional logic with the case task, which is like an if else. And then we registered our flow and attached a schedule to it. And now we're going to talk a bit more about mapping, which is one of the more advanced Prefect tools, but also one of the tools that uniquely defines Prefect, right? So mapping is a way of dynamically altering that schematic or that directed acyclic graph that was created. So when we map in this way, the first element will go through the load image, convert to PIL, improve contrast, resize, and save. And then the second image will go through all of these as well, and then the third, and so on. And what happens here is that we have a depth-first execution happening. So when we chain our maps like these, if we have a parallel execution, like if we're doing the execution in parallel, like image, let's say we have 4 workers, image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, they will go through all 4, they will go through all the steps, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 will go through all the steps, and so on. And what's interesting is that when Prefect uses Dask, has native integrations with Dask, so a lot of times we can just offshore the work to the Dask workers and not have to collect it every intermediate step. And that's why depth first execution is more efficient. So I mentioned we have a native integration with Dask. So in this specific case, we're going to use the Dask engine for parallel execution. We have all we need to do is change the flow executor. And now this will all run in parallel. So it's really nice that this is independent of whatever logic we define in our code. The local Dask executor will be the one responsible for parallelizing. We can also use a real Dask executor. So in this specific case, we see our users use a couple of different do this in a couple different ways. So number one, a lot of them spin up their own Kubernetes cluster. A lot of people use Dask on top of AWS ECS, which is the container service. We are for Prefect is friends with Coiled. Coiled is another way to spin up a Dask cluster, and in fact, what I find to be the easiest way. And I'll show you how to do it here. So all we need to do is create a software environment for Coiled and pass in the dependencies to it that are needed to run our code. This software environment creates a Docker container and uploads that Docker container to Coiled. And now I can just spin up an executor, link my Docker container here, and then now I can say shutdown on close is true. And what happens is whenever I run this flow now, it's going to spin up a Dask executor with Coiled, run the code on this Dask executor, and then spin it down. And this is very useful for setups where you really need the parallelism, or you really need a cluster to process all of your data in an efficient way. It's very easy to spin up that Coiled cluster. And then if you need more workers, you can just add it here. And with that, I'm going to proceed to a demo. Questions are welcome during this time. Some of these steps may take a while. So in general, first I'll show that here's the Prefect Cloud dashboard. I have a lot of failed flow runs because I was trying some stuff. But here, like if I click on a failed flow run, I'll just refresh this. So if I click on a failed flow run, I can get the logs, see the specific tasks where it failed. So in this one, it failed because my cluster failed to start. I have this HeartX project, and I have 2 flows registered under it, this image and this image task. So image is really just the flow that I described earlier. There's just no parallel execution. Image task is where I attach that Coiled executor and run it in parallel. So what's going to happen is when you use Prefect, you're still responsible for where that code is running, right? you need to provide the hardware and the resources. All we're doing on our end is monitoring, kicking off those jobs, but you still provide the infrastructure. And this is what we call the hybrid model. And the hybrid model is really useful because there are a lot of companies who have restrictions into what data they can pass through, like outside applications. They have data that can't leave their on-premise infrastructure. And the hybrid model allows a lot of flexibility around that, because Prefect orchestrates your work that runs on your own on-premise systems, but we don't have to see any of your code, and we don't have to see any of your data. All we're doing is keeping metadata that helps us trigger the start of that flow run. So over here, I'm going to use my own local machine as the for these flows to run on. And in order to do that, I'm going to start a Prefect agent. And this is what you would do also if you are using Prefect. If it's on your own on-premise infrastructure, you have to spin up an agent, and the agent pulls Prefect Cloud every 10 seconds, sees if there's jobs to run, and if there's jobs to run, then it kicks off those jobs. So here we're waiting for flow runs. When I go to my agents, you'll see that there's this agent. This is the one I just spun up, and we're going to use this agent with our flow. So I am going to run this image flow, and I'm going to hit the quick run over here. And you'll see this yellow bar popped up. That's the scheduled. And then eventually it's going to turn blue. And the blue means that it's already running, right? If I go into the logs here, you're going to see that we had those map tasks that were running all over the images. Oops. So you're going to see that one by one, it's going through those tasks and executing them. But of course, this can be parallelized and executed much faster with the Dask cluster. So I'm going to cancel this because it'll take a while to finish. And instead, what I'm going to do is go to my other flow, which was the image Dask. And this one has been configured to run with the coiled cluster. So if I quick run here, we're going to see a new scheduled job or submitted job. We're going to see that our agent got that job and is now spinning up that job. So our agent is running locally, but because we use the coiled executor, this agent will be responsible for spinning up that coiled executor and running the code there. So if I go into this flow and I go to the logs, you're going to see that this cluster is being created. That's the coiled cluster that we defined. And if I go to my coiled dashboard, and I'll just refresh to be sure this is it, you're going to see that this cluster on top that's spinning up, that was orchestrated by the Prefect job. And then the code will, this takes a couple minutes to spin up, like 2 to 3 minutes maybe. And then what we're going to see is the code will run on that, and our tasks should be successful on this side. But then while we wait for that, I ran this already last night. I got some of the images and I loaded them into Label Studio, and with the contrast improved on these images. This is still dark. I probably should have increased the contrast. But in general, you can point. Now we have a flow that runs every day. So we can get images from one S3 bucket and upload it to another S3 bucket. And then we can feed them into Label Studio. We can connect Label Studio to those S3 buckets and sync them that way. And now we could get those pre-processed images into our Label Studio for labeling.
Kevin, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you happen to have the unenhanced version of those images we could put side by side just as like a visual
Yeah.
If not, it's all good.
The only example I have at this point is this yeah, like I had the Jupyter notebook open and I was like playing with that contrast, and this is the only example I have.
Yeah.
So if we go to this, we'll see it turn green, and that also means that if you remember, we have a Slack message that the flow succeeded. So over here, if I bring Slack over, you're gonna see that this 12:47 p.m. this message just came in from Prefect, and it says the images have been processed. And with that, yep.
So just sort of a recontextualizing question a little bit, because I've been doing a little bit of back channel encouraging of folks to ask some questions, and I think there may be perfect understanding. There may also be a little bit of reticence, and I guess part of my role is to ask the dumb questions. So just generally speaking, what this enables, in this scenario at least, would be a scientist, taking microscopic photos from a microscope and leaving them in a I don't know, a folder somewhere that gets synced to an S3 bucket, and then they get automatically preprocessed and ingested, and that just sort of works. The end. So it's like you're collecting images from the wild essentially, and this could be useful in different scenarios, right? Maybe it's someone taking pictures of street iconography. I think we discussed that initially, or some other field, right? And the convenience of this is there's sort of now an automated flow, thanks to Prefect, that goes from I'm somebody in Barcelona taking a picture of a street sign to that image has been normalized and enhanced in a way that is predictable and uploaded and automatically ingested by Label Studio, and it just works. So you go from okay.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. But I just want to add to that. So Prefect has an API also where you can kick off a flow run just by putting a request to that API. So you can also, with this system, have event-based flows that don't run on a schedule. So for your example, where somebody just takes a picture and then uploads it to S3, you can use like a Lambda in S3 to listen to that S3 bucket, detect a new image, and then pass the location of that over to Prefect, and Prefect can automatically pre-process that for you and upload it to where you want, like a sync bucket for Label Studio to pick up later on.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's it I have for my. I do have one last slide, just a recap slide here. So in general, right, just want to recap everything we did. So Prefect is a workflow orchestration tool. Our goal is to eliminate negative engineering. I showed you how to use Prefect and some of the Prefect tools, such as parameters and mapping, and we even executed it on a DAS cluster that was just spin up. I showed you the Prefect Cloud dashboard, and just some scratch the surface of how you can interact with your Prefect flows through the Prefect Cloud UI. And then just a couple of links here. Number one is our Git repo. We're open source. Number two is our Slack channel. Yeah, you can just join. We invite, if you're just saying, if you want to come in and just ask like, how do you compare to Airflow? How do you compare to Daxter? Like, we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Even if you're just like brainstorming, like, how could I use Prefect in this setup? We also help with that. In general, we have very active community. All questions are welcome. And then the last link I have here is, of course, our website, prefect.io, and you can find the documentation on this website also. And with that, there's just one note. I have to mention that we are hiring in a lot of different positions, not just developers. So if you're interested in working for Prefect, do come and check our careers page.
Nice. I might steal that from you for next webinar we do. Awesome. Thank you. That's wonderful. Let me just share my screen really quickly. And thanks again for your time, Kevin. Was there any, I don't know, personal social info you wanted to share? I don't think you're on Twitter, right? You're not one of those.
No, I'm not on Twitter, but you can. I mean, you can easily find me on LinkedIn, I think.
Yeah.
You can because like I've presented in other places and then I've gotten LinkedIn requests. I accept all LinkedIn requests if you want to add me. You can also directly talk to me in the Slack channel if you want to.
Awesome. Okay, well, that was great. Hopefully folks have a slightly better sense for the sort of power and extensibility of Prefect as a tool, because we're going to be running a contest starting now. And here it is. It's a very simple thing. We're starting simple. If this is successful, we'll do more contests in the future. So please participate. That's also a vote that this sort of thing is something that the community wants. And if not, that's fine too. So here's how it's going to go. Between now and Monday of next week, we are running a challenge where you join the Prefect Challenge channel, which I've already created in Label Studio Slack. Bit.ly's below if you haven't joined it. Join that channel, and it basically has a reread of this. You can read this there too. Submit your idea for the most innovative use of Prefect with Label Studio. Please don't use the Prefect channel for discussions about what an idea, well, if there's clarifications to be made, we'll make it on the channel. But try to use that for submitting your idea. The idea should be more than a description. It should be at least a diagram, if nothing more, describing the solution visually. A Git repo would be great, a video, something tangible and technically feasible. And that gives confidence that the folks judging, which is going to be our community, have a sense that you know what you're talking about at the very least, right? The community is going to be judging it. I'll announce the judging. It'll happen in a form. It won't happen in the channel, but I'll post the form in the channel. I'll probably announce the judging on Tuesday. We'll lock all the submissions on Monday. So you have until Monday to get it in. And then we will invite the community to judge on Tuesday. And then we're going to announce the one winner of the $100 Amazon gift card, which I should have mentioned in this slide, over on next Wednesday, June 3rd, in our announcements channel. Again, this is for most innovative use of Prefect with Label Studio. You just got a crash course in one powerful use case, but surely there's some interesting nuggets we haven't thought of. We're trying to leverage the brain trust here to come up with some other interesting uses. So join Prefect Challenge in our Slack. And if anybody has any questions about the contest, you can also ask those in that Slack, or you can DM me, whatever, open book. So that's the challenge. Going back just a quick slide. There we go. So next webinar is going to be on using Label Studio with machine learning, backends, integrations, etc. A couple weeks after that, we're going to be doing something with Great Expectations. And check out the new NVIDIA blog as well. And thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar today. I think we're getting you out of here before time. And thanks again, Kevin, for joining us today and for that great presentation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.